Hey guys, tonight, we're going to wander into a version of ancient Rome that most history books only glimpse for a moment before turning the page. But before we begin, if you're enjoying these sleepy journeys through the past, feel free to like the video, subscribe if you'd like to return for more, and maybe leave a comment telling me where you're listening from tonight. I always enjoy seeing how many different corners of the world gather together for these quiet historical adventures. Now, dim the lights a little, settle into your favorite position, maybe pull a blanket a little closer, let the sounds of the day drift farther away, and imagine that the year is somewhere in the 2nd century after Christ. The greatest city in the world stretches around you, the sun is sinking, and ancient Rome is only just beginning to wake up. For many people today, cities grow quiet after dark. Shops close. Streets empty. Windows darken one by one. Rome was different. Rome was enormous. Perhaps 1 million people crowded within and around its walls. Senators and merchants, slaves and soldiers, bakers and dock workers, foreigners from distant provinces, all packed together in a city that never seemed entirely at rest. As evening approaches, shadows lengthen across marble temples, the golden light catches the tops of columns, pigeons flutter from rooftop to rooftop, the heat of the day slowly loosens its grip. And all around the city, people begin preparing for the hours ahead. Some are heading home, others are just stepping outside. You find yourself standing near a busy street where carts rattle over stone paving. The air carries dozens of scents at once: fresh bread, olive oil, smoke from cooking fires, animal dung, perfume, sweat. Rome was magnificent, Rome was crowded, and Rome could be surprisingly dirty. Those realities existed side by side. A wealthy senator might dine beneath painted ceilings while only a few streets away a laborer searched for a cheap meal before another exhausting day of work. Yet when darkness arrived, both rich and poor became part of the same living city. Night changed Rome. The daytime noise never vanished completely, but it transformed. Markets began closing, torches appeared, voices echoed differently through narrow streets, windows glowed with flickering lamplight, laughter drifted from doorways, music emerged from unexpected corners. And somewhere in the gathering darkness, thousands of Romans were preparing to spend the night not sleeping, but celebrating. Not every gathering was grand. History often remembers emperors hosting extravagant feasts. Those certainly happened, but most Romans experienced something simpler: a cup of wine shared among friends, a crowded tavern, a warm meal bought from a street vendor, a conversation that stretched longer than intended, a gamble, a song, a flirtation, a story. Small moments that helped people forget, at least briefly, the hardships of daily life. Because life in Rome was not easy, many citizens lived in cramped apartment buildings. Work could be exhausting, disease was common, fire was a constant danger, and uncertainty touched nearly everyone. Perhaps that is why the city's nightlife mattered so much. The hours after sunset offered something precious: a chance to feel free, a chance to belong, a chance to become part of the endless human river flowing through the empire's capital. As twilight deepens, the sky above the city turns from gold to violet, temple roofs fade into silhouette. The first stars begin appearing overhead. Below them, Rome glows with thousands of tiny flames, oil lamps, torches, lanterns, each one marking a person moving through the night. And if you follow those lights carefully, they will lead us into a world of taverns, feasts, bathhouses, musicians, gamblers, lovers, watchmen, and restless dreamers, all waiting beneath the approaching darkness of a Roman evening. The last glow of daylight lingers behind the western hills, while the lamps scattered across the city begin to outshine the fading sky. Without quite noticing it, you've taken your first steps into Rome's evening. The daylight crowds are thinning, but the city itself has no intention of resting. Instead, it seems to inhale, slowly, as though preparing for another life entirely. The air feels different now. The fierce afternoon heat has softened into something almost pleasant. A light breeze slips between rows of towering apartment blocks, carrying with it the mingled scents of warm stone, olive oil, damp timber, and smoke curling lazily from hundreds of household hearths ahead. The broad avenue is still busy. Merchants fold heavy cloth awnings over their market stalls. They count coins beneath flickering oil lamps while apprentices stack baskets that only hours before overflowed with figs, onions, garlic, and herbs gathered from the surrounding countryside. Business is ending for some. For others, it is only beginning. A baker lifts fresh loaves from an oven that has glowed since before sunrise. Night customers are arriving, laborious finishing long shifts, travelers entering through the city gates, and neighbors who delayed supper until the day's work was complete. A woman balances a clay jug against her shoulder while guiding two sleepy children toward home. One child struggles to keep his eyes open, his sandals scraping softly across the worn paving stones. His mother smiles faintly, brushing dust from his hair before continuing through the growing shadows. Nearby, an elderly man settles onto a stone bench outside his doorway. He does not hurry indoors. The evening air is cooler than the rooms above him, where narrow apartments often trap the day's lingering warmth. Around him, familiar faces appear one by one. Quiet greetings are exchanged. Someone shares dried olives from a small woven pouch. Another speaks about grain prices. A third complains gently about aching knees that predict tomorrow's weather more faithfully than any priest. These conversations require no grand purpose, simply remaining together carries its own comfort. The streets themselves begin changing character. During daylight, wagons filled every available space, rattling endlessly over uneven stone. Yet Roman law restricted many heavy carts from entering the busiest districts during much of the day. As darkness approached, the rhythm reversed. Now the distant creaking grows louder. Oxen pull loaded wagons toward warehouses. Wine barrels roll slowly through narrow lanes. Builders move timber while roads are less crowded with pedestrians. Iron-rimmed wheels strike loose stones with sharp echoes that bounce between tall buildings. The sound becomes part of Rome's nightly heartbeat. Above, laundry left hanging from upper-story windows sways gently in the breeze. Neighbors lean over wooden balconies to exchange news across the narrow gap separating one apartment from another. A small dog barks somewhere overhead. Someone laughs. Another voice sings only a few uncertain notes before disappearing inside. Life overlaps in every direction. Privacy exists, but only in fragments. As the sky deepens into shades of blue and purple, temple columns catch the final ribbons of sunlight. Marble glows briefly, almost like polished ivory, before surrendering to shadow. Priests extinguish certain ceremonial fires while others continue burning steadily through the night. Sacred places never seem entirely asleep, neither does the city itself. Near a public fountain, fresh water splashes continuously into worn stone basins. People gather with clay jars before returning home. Some pause longer than necessary, enjoying conversation more than the task itself. Children chase one another around the fountain until tired parents finally persuade them to leave. Even their footsteps seem softer now. The city's noise has not faded, it has merely changed its voice. The sharp shouting of merchants becomes relaxed conversation. hammering workshops fall quiet. Instead, music drifts faintly from somewhere beyond the next street. Perhaps a reed flute, perhaps only someone practicing after work. Its melody rises briefly above the countless ordinary sounds before dissolving once more into the evening. You notice how the light behaves differently at this hour. Torches throw moving shadows across painted walls, oil lamps glow amber through linen curtains, bronze statues gleam for a heartbeat before disappearing into darkness again. Every step reveals another pocket of gentle light surrounded by cool shadow. The city feels larger than it did beneath the afternoon sun. Corners seem deeper, doorways more mysterious, yet remarkably alive. This is the hour when respectable households finish their meals, when workers begin searching for company, when musicians tune their instruments, when cooks prepare their busiest hours, and when countless Romans quietly choose not to end the day just yet. Following the growing murmur ahead, you realize the brightest lights are no longer coming from homes at all, but from places where strangers soon become companions over a shared cup of wine. The warm glow spilling from tavern doorways draws you farther into the evening, while behind you the ordinary homes of Rome quietly disappear into shadow. The city has crossed an invisible line. Day has ended, yet life has not. If anything, it feels as though another Rome has awakened. By now the stars have fully claimed the sky, though they are difficult to admire for long. Smoke from countless hearths drifts upward in pale ribbons, softening the heavens into a hazy blanket. Between the rooftops, the moon peeks through only in brief moments before vanishing behind chimneys and the upper stories of crowded apartment houses. The streets remain alive, not with the hurried purpose of mourning, but with a slower rhythm that belongs only to the night. A pair of dock workers stroll home from the river, their shoulders still dusted with flour from unloading grain ships that arrived before sunset. Their conversation wanders from aching backs to tomorrow's wages, then to whether the tavern on the next corner still has enough wine to justify one last cup before sleep. Nearby, a barber finally closes his tiny shop. He sweeps dark curls of hair into the gutter with slow, practiced strokes, nodding politely to neighbors who have passed his doorway every evening for years. Before locking the wooden shutters, he pauses to watch the street for a moment, as though reluctant to leave the city's nightly performance. Above him, dozens of windows remain open. Families crowd onto narrow balconies to escape the lingering warmth trapped inside their apartments. Someone gently rocks a restless baby. An elderly woman quietly spins wool beneath the light of a small oil lamp. Across the alley, another household finishes supper unusually late, their laughter floating downward in soft bursts before fading into the wider chorus of the city. In wealthier districts, elegant villas glow behind painted walls. Servants move silently through shaded courtyards carrying bronze lamps from one room to another. Water trickles endlessly through marble fountains, its gentle sound almost drowning the distant rumble of wagon wheels beyond the gates. Inside, conversations continue over fruit, cheese, and watered wine. Guests show no sign of leaving. Elsewhere, the experience of night is entirely different. A carpenter works by lamplight, hoping to finish a commission before sunrise. Every completed stool or table means another handful of coins for his family. Across the street, a seamstress stitches torn tunics beside a window, stopping only to rub tired eyes before threading her needle once more. Rome does not divide neatly into those who celebrate and those who sleep. Many simply continue. Life demands it. The city's enormous appetite never rests. Bakers prepare dough long before dawn. Millers grind grain through the night. Fishermen organize nets for the morning market while fishermen returning from evening waters quietly unload their catch beneath flickering torches. Even the animals seem caught within Rome's endless routine. Mules snort impatiently beside wagons. Cats weave silently between stacked amphorae searching for careless mice. Dogs curl beside doorways, lifting their heads only when familiar footsteps pass. The city breathes through countless small lives, each following its own quiet rhythm. Every so often, a distant shout echoes along the stone streets. No one appears especially alarmed. Perhaps someone has misplaced a purse. Perhaps friends are arguing over dice. Perhaps a drunk has become dramatically convinced that he alone understands politics. Rome has heard such voices before. Far above the rooftops, the great monuments stand almost unchanged by darkness. The Colosseum becomes a vast silhouette against the moonlit sky. Temple pediments fade into shadow. Triumphal arches catch only the faintest silver edge where moonlight touches carved stone. Without the bustling daytime crowds, these buildings seem older somehow, more patient, as though they have watched thousands of evenings unfold exactly like this. You begin to notice something curious. There is no single center to Rome's nightlife. Instead, it spreads everywhere. A quiet conversation outside one doorway, music from another, a family sharing bread beneath an open window. Merchants counting coins by lamplight, travelers searching for an affordable bed, students reciting speeches aloud for tomorrow's lessons, priests tending sacred fires, workers beginning shifts while others finally end theirs. Each street contributes its own small note to the city's endless melody. No trumpet announces the night. No bell declares that the festivities have begun. Rome simply flows from one hour into the next, almost effortlessly, as though the darkness itself has become another citizen moving calmly through familiar streets. And among all these lives unfolding together, one kind of place shines brighter than nearly any other: low-roofed, crowded, noisy establishments where ordinary Romans gathered not for luxury, but for companionship, food, gossip, and cups of remarkably ordinary wine. The streets grow quieter as you leave the wider roads behind. The great monuments of Rome still stand above the city, but the attention of the night has shifted away from marble temples and public squares. The places that truly belong to ordinary Romans are hidden in smaller streets, behind simple wooden doors, where the smell of cooked food and the sound of conversation drift into the darkness. A small doorway catches your attention. Above it hangs a painted sign showing a cup and a jar, a simple mark for those who cannot read. The entrance is narrow, the walls are plain, and the stone around the doorway has been worn smooth by generations of passing feet. Inside is a popina, a Roman tavern. It is not a place built for emperors or wealthy senators. There are no grand statues, no polished marble floors, no servants carrying expensive dishes. Instead, there are wooden benches, rough tables, clay cups, and the familiar warmth of a small hearth burning quietly in the corner. A few bronze oil lamps hang from the walls, their tiny flames moving gently whenever someone opens the door. Their light touches the smoke-darkened ceiling and the faded paintings along the plaster walls. The room is simple, but it is alive. For many Romans, places like this were an important part of everyday existence. Not everyone had a large kitchen at home. Many people lived in crowded apartment buildings where cooking could be difficult and dangerous. Carrying fuel, preparing meals, and finding enough space for a proper fire were not always easy, so the neighborhood tavern became something more than a place to drink. It became a place to eat, a place to meet, a place to escape the silence of a small room. At one table, a group of workers sits together after a long day of labor. A stone worker rubs his tired hands, a carpenter places his tools beside his feet, a messenger removes the dust from his cloak. They share bread and simple bowls of food while talking about the ordinary struggles of life in the empire. The conversation moves slowly. Someone mentions the price of grain. Another complains about a difficult customer. Someone else tells a story from the marketplace that becomes slightly more exaggerated with every retelling. Soon, even those who did not hear the beginning are smiling. This is how many Roman evenings passed. Not with grand celebrations, but with small moments of comfort. Behind the counter, the tavern keeper carefully prepares another serving. Large terracotta amphorae stand nearby, holding wine that will be mixed with water before being poured into clay cups. The drink is not meant to be a luxury. It is something affordable that allows people to relax after exhausting work. The food is equally simple: fresh bread, olives, lentils cooked with herbs, beans, cheese, sometimes fish, sometimes a small portion of meat if someone had extra coins. The meals of the Popina were not designed to impress guests, they were designed to fill empty stomachs, and perhaps that was exactly why people returned. A person could enter this room as a stranger and leave knowing a few new names. A traveler could learn which roads were safe. A worker could hear news from across the city. A lonely person could sit among voices instead of spending another evening alone. The wealthy Romans who criticized these places often failed to understand this simple truth. The value of a tavern was not only in what was served on the table, it was in what happened around it. Friendships formed, stories traveled, rumors spread, plans were made. The enormous empire outside was governed by laws, armies, and officials, but the daily life of Rome was held together in smaller places like this: a warm meal after difficult work, a familiar face behind the counter, a conversation that lasted longer than expected. As the night continues, more customers arrive. The wooden door opens again, allowing a cool Roman breeze to enter. The flames of the oil lamps tremble briefly, another clay cup is filled, another story begins, and somewhere nearby, beyond the narrow streets and quiet apartment buildings, another essential part of Roman nightlife is waiting inside countless amphorae, the drink that followed nearly every gathering in the ancient city: wine. The quiet conversations of the Popina continue behind you as you step back into the Roman night. The wooden door closes slowly, and for a moment the sounds from inside become softer, a distant mixture of voices, laughter, and clay cups touching worn tables. But the scent remains, a familiar smell carried through the streets of Rome: wine, not the rare and carefully preserved bottles imagined by later generations. Not a luxurious drink reserved only for grand celebrations. In ancient Rome, wine was everywhere. It flowed through wealthy dining rooms, humble taverns, military camps, roadside inns, and small household gatherings. It was part of daily life in a way that few other drinks could match. As you walk deeper into the city, you begin noticing the signs of its importance. Large terracotta amphorae stand outside shops and warehouses. Merchants carefully record shipments arriving from distant provinces. Workers unload heavy containers from wooden carts. Each jar represents a long journey across the Roman world. Some wines traveled from the hills of Italy. Others arrived from regions such as Gaul, Greece, and the eastern Mediterranean. The empire was connected by roads and ships, and wine moved along those same routes. For Romans, wine was not simply something to enjoy, it was something people expected to have access to. Even ordinary families found ways to include it in their meals. But the wine most Romans drank would surprise many people today. It was usually not strong, sweet, and rich like the expensive wines enjoyed at elite banquets. Much of it was rough, sharp, sometimes unpleasant. To improve the taste, Romans often mixed wine with water before drinking. This was considered normal. In fact, drinking wine without mixing it was sometimes viewed as excessive or uncivilized. The wealthy might discuss the quality of different vineyards and the age of certain wines, but for many ordinary people, the main concern was simpler. Was there enough to share? Inside another small tavern, you see a familiar scene. A tavern keeper lifts a bronze ladle into a large clay amphora. The liquid pours slowly into a waiting cup. The customer watches patiently. No one expects perfection. The drink is part of the evening itself, a reason to sit, a reason to talk, a reason to stay a little longer before returning home. Near the counter, a group of workers share a larger jug between them. They are not celebrating a victory. They are not attending a luxurious feast. They are simply enjoying the few peaceful hours between today's labor and tomorrow's responsibilities. One man tells a story about his supervisor. Another laughs while describing a mistake made at the market. The conversation grows warmer as the cups are passed around. Wine creates a small pause in the middle of difficult lives. For many Romans, those pauses mattered. Life in the ancient city could be demanding. Work was physically exhausting. Homes were often crowded. Money was never guaranteed. A simple drink shared with others offered a brief feeling of comfort. Yet wine was also deeply connected to Roman traditions. It appeared at religious ceremonies. It was offered to household gods. It accompanied important meals and public celebrations. It was present during moments of joy and moments of remembrance. A cup of wine could represent friendship, respect, hospitality, even belonging. A traveler arriving in a Roman town might not know anyone, but sitting down at a table and sharing a drink created an immediate connection. The language might be different, the background might be different, but the simple act of drinking together crossed many boundaries. As the night grows older, the taverns become louder, more people arrive. Some carry coins from their day's work, others arrive with only enough for a single cup. The same drink welcomes them all. Outside, amphorae rest quietly in storage rooms. Inside, clay cups continue moving from hand to hand. The flames of oil lamps flicker against the walls. The voices continue, and across Rome, from wealthy villas to humble street corners, wine remains one of the invisible threads holding the city's long nights together. But a drink alone was never enough to keep Romans awake until dawn. Soon, another smell begins drifting through the streets, the smell of food cooking after dark. The taste of wine still lingers in the air as you continue through the streets of Rome. Behind you, the taverns remain filled with conversation, but outside another part of the city is beginning to reveal itself. A different kind of gathering is forming, not around tables, not beneath painted ceilings, but beside the roads themselves, near corners where people pass, near busy intersections, near the entrances of crowded apartment buildings. Small food sellers are preparing for the late hours, when many Romans begin searching for something warm to eat. Because Rome was a city of movement, people were constantly arriving and leaving. Workers finished their shifts at different times. Travelers entered through the gates after long journeys. Messengers carried information across the city, and many ordinary citizens did not have the space, time, or resources to prepare elaborate meals at home. So the streets themselves became places where people could find dinner. You follow the smell first. Smoke from a small cooking fire drifts between the buildings. The scent of bread mixes with roasted meat, herbs, and spices. A wooden stall stands against a stone wall. It is simple: a few shelves, a cooking surface, Clay containers holding ingredients, nothing about it suggests wealth, yet people gather around it. The seller works by the light of a small bronze oil lamp placed nearby, carefully preparing food for customers passing through the night. A worker approaches with a few coins in his hand. He has spent the entire day carrying heavy materials across the city. A full meal at home would require time he does not have. Here, he can quickly purchase something warm before continuing his evening. The seller hands him a piece of bread filled with a simple mixture of ingredients. The worker eats slowly, standing among strangers who are doing the same. For a few moments, everyone shares the same experience. The wealthy might have private kitchens filled with servants preparing elaborate dishes. But the streets belong to everyone, and street food was one of the easiest ways for ordinary Romans to enjoy something beyond the most basic household meals. In the ancient city, food sellers offered many different choices. There were warm breads, small cakes, beans and lentils, olives, cheeses, fish prepared with strong sauces, meat cooked over small fires. One of the most popular foods was something surprisingly familiar, a type of flatbread topped with ingredients, sold as an easy meal for people on the move. Roman street food was practical. It was designed for people who had somewhere to go. But these stalls offered more than food. They created small meeting places. A customer waiting for a meal might hear news from another neighborhood. A traveler might learn about a festival happening the following week. Two strangers might begin a conversation while watching food being prepared. The seller often knew the regular customers. He remembered the man who always requested extra olives, the woman who purchased bread every evening, the messenger who arrived near midnight before beginning another journey. These small relationships formed the hidden structure of city life. Rome was enormous, but moments like these made it feel smaller. As you continue walking, you notice how different parts of the city have their own smells. Near the markets, spices fill the air. Near the river, there is the scent of fish and wet wood. Near workshops, smoke and metal dominate. Near food stalls, the smell is warmer, more comforting. It reminds people that even after difficult days, there is still something waiting at the end of the road. A simple meal, a familiar face, a few quiet minutes before returning home. The night continues growing deeper. Oil lamps flicker, footsteps echo across stone streets. The final customers collect their food before disappearing into the darkness. But not everyone walking these streets is searching for dinner. Some are searching for excitement, some are looking for distraction, and some are carrying small wooden boards and carefully counted coins, heading toward games where fortune could change in a single roll. The last smells of street food slowly disappear as you continue deeper into the Roman night. The vendors begin clearing away their wooden boards. Clay bowls are stacked. Cooking fires are reduced to glowing embers. The streets become quieter in some places, but not everywhere. Beyond the main roads, where narrow alleyways twist between tall buildings, another kind of gathering continues. A small crowd has formed beneath the walls of an old Roman apartment block. There are no grand decorations, no official signs, only a few people sitting close together, speaking in low voices. At the center of the group is a simple wooden board, and scattered across it are small pieces used for a game that has entertained Romans for centuries. Dice. Gambling was deeply connected to Roman nightlife. For some people, it was harmless amusement after a long day. For others, it became a dangerous habit that slowly consumed whatever money they had managed to earn. The appeal was simple. A person could spend hours working under the hot sun, carrying heavy loads, building roads, or crafting goods, and then, with a small throw of the dice, experience a sudden moment of uncertainty. A moment where anything seemed possible. You step closer. The players sit beneath the faint light of bronze oil lamps placed on the ground nearby. Their faces appear and disappear as the flames move gently in the night breeze. One man carefully shakes a pair of small bone dice inside his hand. The others watch quietly. For a brief second, the entire group becomes still, then the dice fall. A few pieces of bone strike the wooden surface. Someone sighs, someone laughs, someone reaches forward to collect the winnings. The entire mood changes in an instant. That was the attraction of gambling, not only the reward. The anticipation, the tiny moment between chance and result. Romans enjoyed many types of games. Some involved dice. Others used small boards and pieces similar to later strategy games. People played during festivals, at meals, in taverns, and sometimes in places where authorities wished they would not, because gambling had a complicated place in Roman society. The wealthy might criticize it publicly. Moral writers warned about the dangers of excessive betting, yet even those who condemned gambling often admitted that it was widespread. People from many different parts of society participated. Soldiers played during periods of rest, merchants placed wagers while waiting for business, workers played after exhausting days, even emperors were known to enjoy games of chance. Human curiosity about fortune was not limited by social class. Still, the atmosphere in these nighttime corners could change quickly. At first, everything seemed friendly. A few coins placed on the table, a little laughter, a shared drink nearby. But when someone lost more than they could afford, the mood sometimes became heavier. A person might borrow money, a friend might argue, a harmless game could become a source of regret. That was the quiet danger hiding beneath the entertainment. The Roman night offered escape, but escape always carried a price. Yet for many people, these games were not about losing everything. They were about a small break from routine, a few moments where ordinary workers could feel excitement, a chance to compete, a chance to joke, a chance to forget tomorrow's responsibilities for a little while. Near another alley, younger Romans gather around a different game. They are not wealthy, they are not important. They are simply passing time. One player proudly claims he has a special talent for predicting the dice. His friends immediately laugh. They have heard the same claim many times before. The night continues around them. A musician plays somewhere in the distance. A cart rolls over uneven stones. A tavern door opens and closes. Rome never provides only one story at a time. Every street contains another small world. Every doorway hides another group of people creating their own evening. As the dice continue rolling, you leave the alley behind. The sounds slowly fade, but ahead, another sound begins to rise, a rhythm, a melody. The unmistakable noise of instruments and voices gathering somewhere beneath the Roman night sky. The sound of dice slowly disappears behind you. The quiet whispers of the alleyways fade into the wider rhythm of Rome's night, and another sound begins to take its place, a melody. At first, it is faint, a few notes carried by the breeze, a simple tune played somewhere beyond the next street, but as you continue walking, the music becomes clearer. A small crowd has gathered near an open courtyard beside a busy road. There are no grand stages or decorated halls. No official announcement has brought people here. They have simply followed the sound. This was one of the many ways Romans entertained themselves after sunset. Music belonged everywhere. It could be heard at wealthy banquets, religious ceremonies, military celebrations, and the ordinary gatherings of people who simply wanted to enjoy an evening outside. In the Roman world, performers brought energy to places where daily life had become tiring. a musician sits beneath the soft flame of a bronze oil lamp, holding an ancient stringed instrument. Nearby, another performer plays a set of pipes whose gentle notes rise above the quiet conversations of the crowd. The instruments are simple compared to the enormous monuments surrounding them, yet the effect is powerful. People stop, they listen, they smile. A tired worker who spent the day carrying stone pauses for a few moments. A shopkeeper finishing his evening task stands beside a doorway. Children watch from behind their parents, trying to imitate the movements of the performers. For a short while, everyone shares the same moment. The performers themselves come from many backgrounds. Some are highly skilled professionals who travel between cities. Others perform because it is their livelihood. They understand how to capture attention. A song must begin at the right moment. A story must be told with the right expression. A dance must follow the rhythm of the music. Their work depends on reading the crowd, knowing when people want excitement, and knowing when they simply want something pleasant to listen to. The dancing is not the dramatic spectacle imagined in later stories of Rome. Often, it is much simpler, careful movements, small gestures, the turning of hands, the rhythm of footsteps, the expression on a performer's face telling a story without words. Some performances are connected to festivals or religious traditions, others exist purely for entertainment. A person might spend the evening watching musicians, storytellers, actors, or dancers before returning home. Rome was a city where people constantly searched for distraction. Life could be exhausting, work could be uncertain, the future could change quickly. Entertainment provided a small doorway away from those worries. Near the edge of the crowd, an elderly man listens. Quietly, he has probably heard similar melodies many times before. Perhaps decades ago, when he was younger, he stood in the same kind of crowd watching another performer beneath another Roman night sky. The city changes slowly, but certain moments repeat. A song, a gathering, a group of strangers standing together, the simple human desire to be entertained. As the performance continues, more people arrive. Some bring cups from nearby taverns, others simply stand in silence, enjoying the music. The flames of oil lamps flicker against the stone walls. The shadows of the performers move across faded Roman plaster. The night feels less like a dark empty space and more like another part of daily life. Eventually, the music begins to soften. The crowd slowly separates. Some return to their homes. Others continue toward taverns where conversation and celebration are still waiting, but the melody remains behind for a moment longer, floating through the Roman streets, and as you follow the fading sound, the world of ordinary entertainment begins to give way to something much grander. Behind the walls of wealthy homes, another kind of nighttime gathering is being prepared, a Roman feast. The last notes of the street musicians disappear into the Roman darkness. The crowd slowly separates. Some people return to their homes carrying the memory of a pleasant evening. Others continue searching for another place where conversation, food, and entertainment can carry them deeper into the night. But beyond the ordinary streets, behind tall walls and carefully guarded entrances, another world is beginning, a world of wealth. A world where the Roman night takes on a very different appearance. You leave the narrow streets behind and approach the entrance of a wealthy Roman house. The difference is immediately clear. The doorway is larger, the walls are decorated with painted scenes. The courtyard beyond contains carefully arranged plants, stone statues, and a small fountain where water moves quietly beneath the night sky. Inside these homes, evening gatherings could continue for many hours. The Roman convivium was not simply a meal, it was a social event, a place where friendships were strengthened, political discussions took place, business relationships were created, and guests displayed their taste and generosity. The host wanted visitors to remember the experience. Servants move quietly through the courtyard carrying bronze lamps and serving dishes. The guests recline on wooden couches arranged around the dining room, unlike ordinary Romans sitting on benches in taverns. Wealthy citizens follow a tradition where they rest on their sides while eating. Soft cushions support their arms. Colorful fabrics decorate the room. The walls are covered with detailed frescoes showing gardens, landscapes, and scenes from mythology. The air carries the smell of expensive perfumes mixed with roasted food and burning incense. At the center of the room, servants bring out dish after dish. There are fruits from distant provinces, fresh seafood, roasted meats, cheeses, honey, spiced sauces. The variety itself is part of the performance. A wealthy Roman host is not only feeding guests, he is demonstrating his position. The meal moves slowly. Conversation is just as important as the food. A senator may discuss politics. A poet may recite verses. A merchant may describe goods arriving from distant lands. A guest might tell stories of travel, battles, or unusual events witnessed across the empire. The evening is carefully shaped around conversation. There is no need to rush. Time itself becomes a luxury. While ordinary workers count their coins carefully and prepare for another demanding day, the wealthy can allow the night to stretch endlessly. Entertainment follows the meal. Musicians may perform nearby. Poets may read their work. Guests may listen while reclining beneath the gentle movement of oil lamp flames. Sometimes performers are invited to provide additional amusement. The wealthy world of Rome had many opportunities for pleasure that were unavailable to most people, yet even here, beneath painted ceilings and surrounded by expensive objects, the same human desires remain. People want company, they want stories, they want laughter, they want to feel connected. A Roman nobleman surrounded by luxury could still become bored. A beautiful room could still feel empty without conversation. A table covered with rare foods could still feel lonely without friends sitting nearby. As the night grows deeper, the feast continues. The outside world becomes quieter. The streets beyond the walls slowly empty. But inside the wealthy house, voices continue beneath the flickering flames. The guests remain comfortable on their couches. The servants move silently between them. The fountain continues its gentle rhythm in the courtyard. For a few hours, the problems of the wider empire feel very far away. Yet beyond these decorated walls, another Rome exists, a Rome of crowded apartments, tired workers, and people searching for simple moments of happiness after long days. And as the night continues, we will return to those streets, to the ordinary Romans who did not have marble dining rooms or endless servants, but who still found their own ways to enjoy the few precious hours between sunset and sunrise. The marble halls of wealthy Roman homes slowly disappear behind you, the quiet fountains, the painted walls, the endless plates of expensive food, all of it fades as you return to the streets where most Romans lived their lives. Here, the night feels different. There are no grand dining rooms, no servants carrying silver dishes, no carefully arranged displays of wealth. Instead, there are small moments, a conversation outside a doorway, a shared meal between neighbors, a few friends sitting together after a difficult day. For most people in ancient Rome, pleasure was not something enormous. It was something they collected in small pieces, a few hours without responsibility. A little laughter, a little music, the warm meal, a familiar voice nearby. The ordinary Roman worker carried many burdens. A laborer might spend the day lifting heavy materials. A craftsman might sit for hours repairing tools, clothing, or household objects. A market seller might stand beneath the sun from morning until evening. When darkness arrived, many people simply wanted a place where they could stop working. You walk through a quieter neighborhood. The tall apartment buildings rise above the narrow streets, their wooden balconies extending over the roads. Small groups of people sit outside their homes. The evening air is cooler now. A man who spent the day working with stone rests against a wall, rubbing his tired shoulders while speaking with a neighbor. Nearby, two women share stories while sorting household items. Children who should already be asleep continue whispering and laughing until an older family member finally sends them inside. These are not the grand celebrations that historians often remember. They are ordinary evenings. But ordinary evenings reveal something important. People in the past were not only workers, soldiers, or citizens recorded in official documents. They were people searching for comfort. They wanted moments that belonged only to them. In one small courtyard, several friends gather around a simple meal. There is bread placed on a wooden table, a bowl of olives, a little cheese, a clay cup passed between them. The food is modest. The conversation is the real feast. Someone tells a story from childhood. Someone complains about a difficult employer. Someone laughs about a mistake made earlier in the day. The worries of life do not disappear. But for a little while, they become lighter. This was one of the quiet powers of Roman nightlife. It gave people a temporary escape from the demands of the day. The city itself could be harsh, crowded streets, expensive food, difficult work, limited privacy. Yet after sunset, people created their own small worlds. A group of friends could transform an empty corner into a place of happiness. A simple meal could become a celebration. A short conversation could become the best part of the day. Even those with very little found ways to enjoy themselves. Some visited taverns, some watched performers, some attended public gatherings. Others simply sat outside their homes and enjoyed the company of neighbors. The desire for enjoyment did not belong only to the wealthy. It belonged to everyone. As the night deepens, you notice how many different versions of Rome exist at the same time. Inside a grand villa, wealthy guests continue their elegant feast. In a crowded tavern, workers share watered wine. In a small courtyard, neighbors exchange stories. On a quiet street, someone plays a simple melody. All of these scenes belong to the same city, the same night, the same empire. Rome was not only the world of emperors and monuments, it was also the world of ordinary people finding small reasons to smile. But even after meals were finished and conversations began to fade, many Romans were not ready to return home. There were still places open late into the night, places where people went not only to eat or drink, but to relax their bodies after exhausting days. The Roman bathhouses. The laughter from quiet courtyards begins to fade as the night moves deeper into Rome. The simple meals have been finished. The clay cups have been emptied. The conversations that carried people through the evening slowly become softer. But many Romans are still not ready to sleep. The city has another place where people gather after dark, a place where tired bodies seek comfort, a place where conversation continues beneath stone ceilings and the sound of running water. The Roman bathhouse. For many people today, a bath is a private moment, something done alone. But in ancient Rome, bathing was often a social experience. The great public baths were among the most impressive buildings in the city. They were places where people washed, exercised, relaxed, and met with friends. They were not simply places of cleanliness, they were part of Roman daily life. As you approach one of these enormous buildings at night, its size becomes clearer. Massive stone walls rise above the surrounding streets. Large entrances stand open. Inside, servants tend to fires that heat the water flowing through the complex. The warmth of the baths offers something rare in the ancient city: comfort. Many Romans spent their days surrounded by dust, smoke, and physical labor. A visit to the baths allowed them to leave those struggles behind, even if only for a short time. You enter through the changing area. Voices echo from the stone walls, people greet one another, friends exchange news, workers relax beside merchants, citizens from different backgrounds share the same spaces. The bathhouse creates a strange kind of equality. A wealthy man and a simple craftsman might both sit beside the same pool. Their lives outside may be completely different, but here, they are both simply Romans enjoying the warmth. The journey through the baths usually followed a sequence. Visitors might begin in a cooler room before moving toward warmer spaces. The heat increases gradually, steam rises, water moves through channels beneath the floors. The walls hold the warmth created by underground furnaces. The technology behind Roman baths was remarkable. Hidden beneath the buildings, fires heated air that traveled through spaces under the floors and inside the walls. The Romans had created places where stone itself seemed to breathe with warmth. Inside the warm rooms, conversations continue. Someone discusses the latest political rumors, another talks about business, a group of friends laughs about a story from earlier that day. The bathhouse is filled with voices, yet there is also a peaceful rhythm, water flowing, footsteps across stone, the quiet movement of people coming and going. For some Romans, the baths were also a place for exercise. They might stretch, train, or practice physical activities before relaxing. Afterward, others came simply because they wanted to spend time among people. The city could feel crowded and overwhelming, but the bathhouse offered a controlled world, a place where the noise of Rome became softer. As the night continues, the number of visitors slowly changes. Some leave and return home, others remain longer, enjoying the warmth before facing the darkness outside. The bronze oil lamps flicker against the walls. The steam rises gently. The sound of water fills the rooms. For a moment, the busy empire beyond the doors feels very distant. Eventually, you step back outside. The cool night air touches your face. Behind you, the bathhouse continues its quiet activity. Ahead, Rome waits. There are still streets to explore, still voices speaking, still people awake beneath the stars, because even now, with the night growing older, the city has not completely surrendered to sleep. The cool air outside the bathhouse feels different now. The warmth of the heated room slowly disappears behind you, replaced by the familiar atmosphere of the streets. Rome has grown quieter, but it has not become silent. The city at night has its own language, a language made from footsteps, distant voices, moving carts, crackling fires, and the countless small sounds of people continuing their lives beneath the darkness. You walk slowly through the narrow streets, listening. The first thing you notice is how far sound can travel through Rome. The tall apartment buildings stand close together, their stone and brick walls creating narrow passages where every noise seems to linger. A wooden shutter closes somewhere above you. A pair of sandals strikes the pavement below. A child laughs before being quickly called back inside. A dog barks in the distance. Then everything settles again, only for another sound to replace it. A wagon moves slowly over the uneven stones. The wooden wheels creak under their heavy load. The driver quietly guides the animals forward, careful not to disturb those sleeping nearby. Yet even this ordinary movement carries through the city. Rome was never completely still. The sounds of daily life simply changed after sunset. During the day, the city belonged to merchants, officials, workers, and crowds rushing toward their destinations. At night, different voices emerged, the tavern keeper calling for one final customer, the musician practicing a melody before tomorrow's performance, the neighbor sharing news from another district, the watchman walking his route. Each sound becomes part of the great nighttime rhythm. But Rome was not only heard, it was smelled. The ancient city carried thousands of different scents, sometimes pleasant, sometimes overwhelming. Near a bakery, the smell of fresh bread remained trapped in the warm evening air. Near a food stall, roasted meat and herbs drifted between the buildings. Near homes, cooking fires released the scent of charcoal and wood smoke. Near the river, the air carried the smell of wet stone, boats, and the busy movement of trade. Rome was a city of constant mixtures, beautiful and unpleasant, elegant and ordinary. A wealthy villa might smell of imported perfumes, flowers, and incense. A crowded street nearby might smell of animals, waste, and smoke. The two worlds existed only a short walk apart. That was the reality of the ancient city. One moment you could pass a marble courtyard filled with carefully arranged gardens. The next, you could turn a corner and find a narrow alley where everyday struggles were impossible to ignore. Yet Romans accepted these contrasts because they were part of life. The night continued, carrying everything together. Near a small doorway, a family prepares a final meal. The smell of warm bread escapes into the street. A bronze oil lamp burns beside them, its small flame moving gently in the evening air. Across the road, someone repairs a broken sandal by the light of another lamp. The scent of leather mixes with smoke from a nearby hearth. Above, from open windows and wooden balconies, dozens of different lives overlap. A baby cries, someone sings softly, a couple argues quietly, friends laugh, a person whispers a prayer before sleeping. All of these sounds belong to Rome. The city is not a single story, it is thousands of stories happening at once. As midnight approaches, the streets become darker, the busiest gatherings begin to shrink. Some lamps are extinguished, some doors close, but others remain open. There are still people walking, still conversations taking place, still small fires burning. The Roman night continues breathing, and somewhere ahead, beyond the familiar streets and warm taverns, a different side of darkness waits, because a city filled with so many people, so many narrow streets, and so many hours spent awake could not avoid danger forever. The same shadows that created mystery also created opportunities for trouble. And as the final flames of evening become fewer and farther apart, the darker corners of Rome begin to reveal themselves. The sounds of Rome continue around you, but the mood has changed. The laughter from the taverns is now farther away. The food stalls have mostly disappeared. Many windows have gone dark. The streets that once felt crowded now contain longer stretches of silence, and in those quiet spaces, another side of the Roman night begins to appear, because a city that never fully slept was also a city where not everyone walked with good intentions. Ancient Rome was enormous. Millions of footsteps passed through its streets over the years, merchants, workers, travelers, soldiers, families, but among them were also people searching for opportunities in the darkness. The same narrow alleys that offered privacy and shelter could also create places where danger was harder to see. You move through a smaller street away from the busy roads. The buildings rise closely together. Upper floors lean slightly over the passage below. Wooden balconies cast shadows across the stones. A bronze oil lamp burns beside a doorway, but much of the street remains covered in darkness. A lone traveler walks carefully. His cloak is pulled close against the cool air. He looks ahead rather than behind. In Rome, moving through the city at night required awareness. People understood That certain areas were safer than others. A well-traveled street near important buildings was different from a forgotten alley far from the main roads. The danger was not always dramatic, sometimes it was simply uncertainty. A stranger approaching too closely, a group of people blocking a narrow passage, a voice calling from somewhere unseen. The Roman night contained many unknowns. For ordinary citizens, the biggest concern was often theft. Coins were valuable, small objects could be sold, a purse carried on the street might represent days or weeks of someone's earnings, a person returning from a tavern after drinking could become an easy target. The darkness gave thieves advantages. They knew the streets, they knew which corners were quiet, they knew when people were distracted. Yet not every nighttime encounter ended badly. Most Romans were simply trying to reach their destinations. A worker heading home, a messenger completing a late journey, a friend walking another person safely back to their neighborhood. The city was not a place of constant fear, it was a place where people learned to be careful. A mother might warn a family member not to wander too far. A shopkeeper might close the wooden shutters earlier in certain areas. A traveler might ask locals which roads were best after sunset. Knowledge of the city itself became a form of protection. As you continue walking, you notice how different the same street can feel depending on the hour. During the day, this road would be filled with voices. Merchants would call out. Customers would bargain. Children would run between the crowds. Now, the same stones seem unfamiliar, the shadows appear longer, every sound becomes easier to notice, the footsteps of another person, the movement of a wooden door, the distant bark of a dog, the quiet crackle of a torch flame. This was the strange nature of Roman nightlife. The darkness created freedom. It allowed people to meet privately, visit taverns, attend performances, and enjoy themselves away from the routines of daylight. But that same darkness also created opportunities for those who wanted to cause harm. The night offered both comfort and uncertainty. Near the edge of the street, a small group of people gathers outside a doorway. For a moment, their voices sound tense. A disagreement seems to be growing. Someone raises their voice, someone else steps closer. The peaceful rhythm of the evening begins to change, because after enough cups of wine, enough crowded streets, and enough tired people carrying the frustrations of daily life, small conflicts could become something larger. The Roman night was full of entertainment, but it also carried moments when patience disappeared. And soon, the quiet streets would hear another familiar sound, angry voices, fast footsteps, the beginning of a disturbance beneath the shadow of the empire's greatest city. The quiet tension of the streets does not last forever. Rome was a city where people gathered in large numbers after sunset. They gathered to eat, to drink, to listen to music, to escape the difficulties of daily life. And whenever large groups of tired, emotional, and sometimes intoxicated people shared the same narrow streets, conflict could appear. Not every Roman night ended peacefully. A conversation that began as a joke could become an argument. A disagreement over money could become a personal insult. A careless comment after too much wine could awaken anger that had been hidden all day. You return to the areas where taverns remain open. The warm glow of bronze oil lamps spills from doorways. Inside, voices rise above the normal evening sounds. A group of workers sits around a wooden table. At first, everything seems ordinary. Clay cups are passed around. Stories are exchanged. Someone laughs loudly. Someone tells a story that becomes more exaggerated with every telling. But as the hours pass, the atmosphere changes slightly. A person who was cheerful earlier becomes impatient. Another begins arguing over a small matter. Perhaps a missing coin, perhaps a disagreement about a game. Perhaps simply the frustration of a difficult life finding an unfortunate moment to appear. This was one of the challenges of Roman nightlife. Wine was part of social life, it brought people together. But too much of it could remove the careful control people usually kept during the day. The Roman streets had seen countless arguments begin this way, two people standing too close, voices becoming louder, friends trying to calm the situation, others gathering nearby because humans have always been curious. When tension appears, the crowd grows, the narrow street becomes filled with movement, a few people call for everyone to stop, someone pulls a friend away, someone else continues speaking angrily. The conflict may end quickly, or it may spread. Most disagreements were probably small and forgotten. A few angry words, a brief struggle, a crowd disappearing as quickly as it formed. But in a city as large as Rome, even small disturbances could become a problem. The streets were crowded, the buildings were close together, noise traveled easily, a single argument could disturb an entire neighborhood. A person sleeping above a tavern might suddenly wake to shouting below. A shopkeeper might open a wooden shutter to see what was happening outside. A family might wait quietly until the noise passed. Nighttime disorder was one reason Rome needed people responsible for keeping control after dark. Because the city could not simply allow every disagreement to continue unchecked. Yet it is important to remember that Roman nightlife was not one endless scene of chaos. For every argument, there were countless peaceful gatherings. For every person who drank too much, there were many others who simply shared a meal and returned home. The disturbances were memorable because they interrupted the normal rhythm. They were the moments when the calm surface of the city briefly broke. As the argument finally fades, the street slowly returns to normal. The crowd disappears, the tavern door closes, the voices become quieter, only a few traces remain: a fallen cup, a disturbed table, a tired person walking home beneath the night sky. Rome continues. The empire does not stop because of a small street conflict. The oil lamps continue burning, the buildings remain standing. The next morning, most people will return to their routines, but during these long Roman nights, there was always a need for someone watching from the shadows. Someone who walked the streets while others slept, someone responsible for responding when the city celebrations became too dangerous, the guardians of the night, the vigils of Rome. The echoes of arguments slowly disappear into the distance, the tavern doors close, the streets begin returning to their quieter rhythm. But while many Romans are heading toward their beds, another group is beginning its work. They move through the darkness when most people are no longer paying attention. They carry responsibility while the rest of the city rests. They are the vigils, Rome's night watch, in a city as enormous as the Roman Empire's capital. Darkness brought unique challenges. The streets were narrow, many buildings were tall and crowded, cooking fires burned inside homes, workshops stored flammable materials. A single accident could quickly become a disaster. The vigils were created to deal with these dangers. They were not simply guards walking through empty streets, they were firefighters, patrolmen, and emergency responders. Their presence was a reminder that even a city famous for entertainment and celebration required order after sunset. You follow their footsteps through Rome. A small group moves along a stone road, carrying equipment through the night. Their clothing is practical. Their work is not designed for ceremony. They are there because problems do not wait for daylight. A bronze oil lamp burns near a doorway as they pass. The flame catches briefly on their equipment. Then the group continues forward. Their patrols took them through neighborhoods where wealthy villas stood close to crowded apartment buildings. They watched over streets filled with merchants, craftsmen, travelers, and families. They knew the city better than many officials. They knew which areas were busy, which buildings were dangerous, which streets became troublesome after taverns closed. The night watch was especially important because fire was one of Rome's greatest fears. Many Roman homes used open flames for cooking and heating, oil lamps burned through the evening, workshops used furnaces. Crowded buildings meant that flames could spread quickly. The vigils carried tools for fighting fires. They used water, they used hooks, they used methods designed to prevent flames from reaching nearby buildings. Their work required speed. A small fire could become a neighborhood disaster if ignored, but their duties did not end with flames. They also helped maintain peace. A disturbance in a tavern, a suspicious person moving through the streets, a citizen needing assistance. The night watch was often the first official presence people encountered after dark. Their role placed them between ordinary citizens and the dangers of the city. As you walk beside them, the contrast becomes clear. Earlier in the evening, Rome was filled with music, food, and conversation. Now, the same streets are quieter. The people who remain awake are not searching for entertainment. They are maintaining the fragile balance that allows everyone else to sleep. The vigils pass beneath Roman arches. Their footsteps echo against stone walls. Above them, balconies stretch over narrow roads. Behind closed wooden shutters, families rest somewhere nearby. A tavern worker cleans the last remaining cups. Somewhere else, a wealthy household extinguishes its final oil lamps. The city slowly settles, yet the night watch continues moving. There is something almost invisible about their work. When nothing happens, nobody notices. When danger appears, everyone remembers they are there. That is often the nature of those who protect a city. Their success is measured by problems that never become disasters. Their victories are quiet. A fire stopped early, a conflict ended before it grew, a person guided safely home. Hours pass, the streets become emptier, the sounds of Rome become softer. The vigils continue their patrol beneath the stars, carrying the responsibility of a city that refuses to completely sleep. But even with guards watching the roads, the Roman night still held secrets. Beyond the busy streets and public gatherings were quieter encounters, private meetings, hidden conversations, and moments when people searched for connection away from the eyes of others. The footsteps of the vigils slowly disappear into the distance. Their torches become smaller points of light between the ancient buildings. The streets are quieter now. The loud gatherings have faded. The taverns are slowly emptying. But even in the deepest hours of the Roman night, some people remain awake for reasons that have nothing to do with food, music, or drink. They are searching for something more personal, a conversation, a familiar face. A hidden meeting beneath the darkness, because the night has always offered something that daylight rarely could: privacy. In a city as crowded as Rome, privacy was not easy to find. Families often lived close together. Apartment buildings could hold many households under one roof. Neighbors heard footsteps, they heard voices, they knew when someone came and went. The darkness created small opportunities for people to step away from ordinary routines. A person could walk through quieter streets, a message could be delivered, a meeting could happen away from the attention of others. You follow a narrow road where the noise of the main streets has almost vanished. The walls are close, the stones beneath your feet are worn smooth from generations of travelers. A bronze oil lamp burns beside a doorway, casting a small circle of warm light. Nearby, two people speak quietly. Their voices are low. Not because they are afraid of the night, but because quiet moments feel more meaningful when the entire city seems asleep. Love and attraction existed in Rome just as they have existed in every society. People formed relationships. They wrote letters, they exchanged gifts, they found ways to show affection. The ancient world was not only made of politics, wars, and monuments, it was also made of ordinary emotions, a person waiting for someone to arrive, a message carried by a trusted friend, a conversation that lasted longer than expected. For some Romans, evenings provided the best chance to meet. During the day, responsibilities controlled their movements, work, family duties, social expectations, but at night, the pace slowed, the streets became less crowded, the pressure of public life became quieter. A simple walk through the city could become a memorable moment. A young man might carefully choose his words while speaking with someone he admired. A woman might exchange stories and laughter with a person she trusted. A married couple might finally find time together after a long day filled with obligations. These moments rarely appeared in official records. Historians often learn about Roman life through laws, military campaigns, and writings of powerful people, but beneath those stories existed millions of private experiences, people feeling excitement, people feeling uncertainty, people hoping to be understood. The Romans also had their own ideas about romance and reputation. Social rules mattered, family expectations mattered, a person's position in society affected how relationships were viewed. What was acceptable for one person might create problems for another. The ancient city was filled with both freedom and restrictions. As you continue walking, you notice small signs of nighttime meetings, a folded message left near a doorway, a flower placed beside a fountain, a person waiting patiently beneath the shadow of a column. These small gestures carried meaning. In a world without instant communication, meeting someone required effort, time, planning, trust. The night made those efforts possible. Eventually, the quiet conversations begin to fade. The streets continue their slow movement toward morning. Some people return home, others continue walking beneath the stars. The Roman night has revealed many sides of itself: celebration, comfort, danger, protection, and now, something more personal, the simple desire to find another person in the middle of a crowded world. Yet Rome was not only a city of human relationships, it was also a city filled with beliefs about things unseen, spirits, signs, dreams, and the mysterious forces that many Romans believed became stronger after dark. The quiet footsteps of secret meetings fade beneath the endless Roman sky. The streets are nearly empty now. The taverns have become silent. The musicians have packed away their instruments. The voices that filled the evening have become distant memories. But as the city grows darker and calmer, another part of the Roman night begins to appear, a world shaped not by what people could see, but by what they believed might be hiding beyond sight. For many Romans, darkness was not simply the absence of sunlight. It was a mysterious space where the unknown seemed closer. The night carried stories, warnings, old beliefs passed from one generation to another. You walk along a narrow street where only a few bronze oil lamps remain burning. Their small flames move gently in the night breeze. The shadows between the buildings appear deeper. The ordinary sounds of the city have changed: a distant animal call, the movement of leaves, the creaking of wooden shutters. Things that seemed unimportant during the day could feel different after midnight. Romans, like many ancient peoples, lived in a world where superstition was deeply connected to everyday life. They looked for signs, they paid attention to dreams. They believed certain moments carried meaning. The boundary between the natural world and the unseen world was not always clear. A person leaving home after dark might quietly repeat a protective phrase. A traveler might carry a small object believed to bring safety. A family might perform household traditions meant to honor protective spirits. These actions were not unusual. They were part of the rhythm of Roman life. Inside a small home, a family prepares for sleep. The bronze oil lamp burns beside a simple household shrine. The flames create gentle shadows on the walls. Before resting, someone places a small offering as a sign of respect toward the household spirits believed to protect the family. The moment is quiet, not dramatic, just a small habit repeated through generations. Romans believed their homes had their own spiritual presence. The household gods were not distant figures living only in temples. They were connected to daily life, to meals, to family, to the safety of the home. But the night also carried fears, stories about strange creatures, wandering spirits, and unusual events traveled through Roman communities. Some stories were told to explain things people did not understand. Others existed simply because humans have always been fascinated by mystery. A strange noise outside, a shadow moving across a wall, an unfamiliar person walking alone after midnight. The imagination could transform ordinary events into something much larger. Even educated Romans who studied philosophy and science still lived in a world filled with religious traditions and supernatural beliefs. Knowledge and superstition existed together. A person could understand the movement of the stars while still believing certain signs carried messages. That mixture shaped the Roman view of the night. The darkness was beautiful, but it was also uncertain. As you walk farther from the crowded streets, the city feels almost transformed. The great buildings become silhouettes, the sounds become softer, the flames of the oil lamps become fewer. For a moment, Rome feels less like the center of an empire and more like a collection of quiet human lives surrounded by mystery. Someone closes a wooden door and whispers a final prayer. Someone looks toward the sky searching for signs. Someone simply pulls a blanket closer and hopes for peaceful sleep. These small moments reveal something important about the ancient world. People did not only fear the night, they respected it. They understood that darkness was a part of life, just as important as daylight. It was a time for rest, a time for reflection, a time when the unseen seemed a little closer. But even the longest night must eventually move toward morning. The lamps begin burning lower. The streets become still. The celebrations that carried on for hours finally begin to disappear. Soon, the Roman night will start releasing its final guests. The city will prepare for the first light of dawn. The Roman night has carried many voices: the laughter of taverns, the music of performers, the quiet conversations of friends, the footsteps of workers returning home, the whispers of people meeting beneath the darkness. But even the longest celebrations must eventually slow. The hours that once felt endless begin to disappear. The streets that were alive with movement now begin to settle. Rome does not suddenly become silent. It simply grows softer. You walk once more through the familiar roads of the city. The taverns that welcomed customers deep into the night are beginning to close. Inside, the last guests finish their conversations. Clay cups sit empty on wooden tables. The final pieces of food are cleared away. A tavern keeper moves slowly, tired after hours of serving neighbors and travelers. The bronze oil lamps that brightened the room are carefully lowered. One by one, the small flames disappear. Outside, the streets carry the signs of an evening that has passed. A forgotten cup beside a doorway, footprints pressed into the dust of the road, a few remaining voices fading between the buildings. The excitement of the night leaves behind small traces, For many Romans, this was the moment when enjoyment met reality again. The next day was waiting. Workers would return to their tasks, merchants would reopen their stalls, craftsmen would prepare their tools. Families would continue their routines. The night had offered a temporary escape, but morning always brought responsibilities back. You pass a wealthy Roman house where the final guests are leaving. The elegant feast has ended. Servants gather dishes. Musicians quietly pack away their instruments. The guests step outside carrying memories of conversation, food, and entertainment. Inside the courtyard, the fountain continues flowing as if nothing unusual happened. The great villa returns to silence. Farther away, in ordinary neighborhoods, the same process is happening. A family extinguishes the last household lamp. A worker removes his cloak and prepares for sleep. A neighbor closes a wooden shutter. The city slowly folds itself away. There is something peaceful about watching a place designed for activity finally rest. Rome was one of the greatest cities of the ancient world. During the day, it could feel overwhelming. Crowded roads, busy markets, thousands of people moving through the streets. But during these final hours before sunrise, another side appeared, a quieter Rome, a more personal Rome, the Rome of tired faces and closed doors, the Rome of people who had spent a few hours laughing before returning to ordinary life. Not every person who stayed awake late was searching for excitement. Sometimes people simply wanted more time with friends, more time away from difficult work, more time to enjoy being alive. That small desire connected everyone, from wealthy citizens in decorated villas to workers sitting outside simple homes. The details were different, the comforts were different, but the reason for staying awake was often the same. People wanted to hold on to the pleasant moments before they disappeared. As the final hours pass, the streets become almost empty. The vigils continue their patrols. A few travelers continue their journeys. The first signs of morning begin to approach. The darkness no longer feels endless. The night has given everything it had to offer. The city has celebrated. It has argued. It has shared meals. It has told stories. Now it rests. The last tavern door closes. The final musician walks home. The final conversation becomes a memory. And above the rooftops of ancient Rome, the sky slowly begins changing color. A new day is waiting beyond the horizon. The Roman night is almost finished. The streets that once carried thousands of conversations have become quiet paths beneath the fading stars. The taverns are closed. The musicians have disappeared. The final guests of wealthy homes have returned behind their wooden doors. Only a few people remain outside now. Those who are finishing late journeys, those who worked through the night, those who spent a few extra hours enjoying the rare freedom that darkness provided. You walk through the streets of Rome as the sky begins its slow transformation. The deep darkness above the rooftops is no longer endless. A faint pale color begins appearing beyond the distant hills. Morning is approaching. For many Romans, this was the moment between two worlds. The excitement of the night was behind them. The responsibilities of the day were waiting ahead. The walk home became a quiet journey of reflection. A worker leaves a tavern carrying his cloak around his shoulders. The night air feels colder now. The warmth of conversation and firelight has been replaced by the stillness before sunrise. His footsteps echo across the stone road. He passes the places that only a few hours earlier were filled with activity. The food sellers are gone. The crowds have vanished. The streets look almost unfamiliar. It is strange how quickly a city can change. A place that felt endless during the evening now seems calm and almost empty. Near a fountain, a small group of friends separates. They have spent hours together sharing stories, laughing, and forgetting their daily struggles. Now each person turns toward a different street, a final greeting is exchanged. A promise to meet again, then they disappear into the quiet neighborhoods of Rome. These small moments were part of the hidden rhythm of ancient city life. People did not only remember grand events, they remembered evenings, conversations, faces, simple experiences that made difficult lives feel more meaningful. The wealthy Romans who attended long feasts would remember the poetry, the food, and the company. The workers who sat in taverns would remember the jokes, the conversations, and the comfort of being surrounded by others. The performer who played music in a courtyard would remember the faces watching in the crowd. Everyone carried something from the night. Even the streets themselves seemed to hold memories. The worn stones had witnessed countless footsteps. Generations of Romans had walked the same roads after celebrations, meetings, and gatherings. A young person returning home after their first late evening, an old citizen walking slowly beneath familiar buildings, a traveler seeing Rome's streets for the first time. The city absorbed all of these stories. As you continue, the first signs of morning become stronger. A baker begins preparing for the day. A worker opens a wooden door. A household fire is carefully rebuilt. The city does not wait for everyone to sleep. Rome simply changes hands. The night belongs to tavern keepers, performers, travelers, and those searching for a few hours of enjoyment. The morning belongs to merchants, craftsmen, and everyone beginning their daily responsibilities. The transition is almost invisible. One world slowly replaces another. A final person walks beneath a Roman arch. The bronze oil lamps beside nearby doors have burned low. The stars begin fading. The sounds of early morning birds replace the distant voices of the night. The great city awakens, but somewhere inside its walls, memories of the evening remain. The laughter from a tavern, the music from a street performer, the quiet conversation between friends, the simple happiness of people who found a small moment of freedom. Ancient Rome was often remembered through emperors, armies, and monuments. But the true heartbeat of the city existed in moments like these, ordinary people walking home before sunrise, carrying ordinary memories, living ordinary lives. And as the first light touches the rooftops, the final traces of the Roman night disappear into the morning air. The city begins another day, but the stories of the night remain hidden within its ancient stones. The first light of morning reaches across the rooftops of Rome. The darkness that carried the city's secrets slowly disappears. The final stars fade above the ancient buildings. The streets that only a few hours earlier were filled with music, conversation, and movement now belong to a different rhythm, the rhythm of a new day. A baker prepares the first bread of the morning, a merchant opens the wooden doors of his shop, a worker steps outside, ready to return to the tasks waiting ahead. Rome wakes up again, and yet, something from the night remains, because the Roman night was never only about drinking, feasting, or entertainment. It was about people searching for moments of comfort inside one of history's greatest cities. A wealthy citizen reclining beneath painted ceilings, a worker sharing simple food with friends, a musician playing beneath torchlight, a traveler walking unfamiliar streets, a family sitting together before sleep. All of them experience the same city in different ways. Ancient Rome was often described through its monuments, its emperors, its armies, its victories, but behind those famous images was another Rome. A Rome of ordinary evenings, a Rome of conversations that were never recorded, a Rome of laughter that disappeared with the morning. A Rome of people who, despite the challenges of their lives, still looked for small moments of happiness. The night gave them that opportunity. when the sun disappeared, the boundaries of daily life softened. Workers could become storytellers, neighbors could become companions, strangers could share a table. For a few hours, the heavy responsibilities of the day became lighter. Of course, Roman nightlife was not perfect. There were dangers, there were conflicts, there were difficult streets and uncertain moments, but that was also part of what made the ancient city feel alive. Rome was complicated, beautiful and uncomfortable, grand and ordinary, a place where luxury existed beside hardship. A place where powerful people and everyday citizens lived under the same sky. As the morning grows brighter, imagine standing above the city. From a quiet hill outside Rome, you watch the streets begin to fill again. The same roads where people celebrated during the night now carry workers moving toward their daily lives. The same buildings that held music and conversation now stand quietly beneath the morning sun. The city has changed, but it is still the same Rome. The stones remember every footstep, the walls remember every voice, the streets remember every person who passed through them. Thousands of years have gone by since those nights. The taverns have disappeared, the lamps have gone cold, the voices have become silent, yet the feeling remains familiar, because people today still understand the desire behind those ancient evenings, the wish to finish a difficult day and find a little comfort, the wish to sit with others and share stories, the wish to stay awake just a little longer because the moment feels too pleasant to leave. Perhaps that is why the Roman night still fascinates us. Not because it was perfect, but because it was human, and somewhere beneath the modern world, beneath the layers of time, the memory of those ancient streets still feels close. A quiet conversation beside a fountain, a small flame glowing beside a doorway, a final song fading into the darkness, a city slowly falling asleep before another sunrise. The night of ancient Rome has ended, but the stories carried by its stones continue waiting.